Ethan decided he was done before he truly understood what had started. The rain fell lightly over downtown Portland, turning the streets into long mirrors of gray and gold. Ethan walked without an umbrella, his hands deep in his coat pockets, his thoughts louder than the city around him. He had just left the cafe, the place where he had spoken words he believed would protect him, words that felt strong for only a moment. He was 36 years old and tired of being brave in the wrong ways. For years, Ethan lived carefully. After his marriage ended, not with anger but with quiet distance, he learned how easy it was to lose someone while still living in the same space. The separation taught him control. Control over feelings, control over expectations, control over hope. He built a calm life filled with routine, work, and small comforts that asked nothing from him. He told people he liked being alone. Most days, that was true. But loneliness does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives gently, sitting beside you, pretending to be peace. On the night he met Claire, Ethan was not looking for anything. He had gone to the bookstore because he enjoyed small readings and quiet crowds. He liked listening to stories that belonged to other people. It reminded him that life continued beyond his own careful boundaries. The reading had already started. When Claire arrived, she slipped into the empty chair next to him, whispering an apology to no one in particular. A few drops of rain clung to her hair. Ski looked slightly embarrassed, but she smiled anyway. Ski was an honest smile, the kind that didn't ask for attention but earned it. Ethan noticed her because she felt real, not polished, not distant. During the reading, he barely focused on the words being spoken. He noticed how Claire listened closely, how she nodded at certain lines, how she pressed her lips together as if saving thoughts for later. When the reading ended and people began to leave, she turned to him and made a quiet comment about the priest's story. It was nothing special, just a simple observation. But it opened a door. They talked briefly that night. No long conversation, no heavy details. She told him she was visiting from Vancouver. He told her he lived nearby. They shared a laugh about the weather and the bookstore's uncomfortable chairs. When they parted, it felt unfinished in a way that stayed with him. Ethan went home and felt unsettled. He told himself it was nothing, just a moment. Just a stranger passing through his evening. But days later, he returned to the bookstore and saw her again. This time, they talked longer. They walked together for a block before stopping, unsure how to continue without making it feel important. Claire mentioned she would only be in town for the summer. Ethan nodded as if that made things simpler. In truth, it made things safer. They exchanged numbers casually, without promises. The first message came that night, then another the next day. Their conversations moved fast, not in volume, but in meaning. They didn't waste time on pretending. They spoke about work, family, fears they rarely shared. Ethan found himself honest in ways he hadn't planned. Claire didn't push. She listened. She responded thoughtfully. She made space for silence. That was what unsettled him the most. He was used to effort, used to explaining himself, used to feeling misunderstood even when loved. With Claire, there was ease. Not excitement that overwhelmed, but calm that felt earned. As days passed, Ethan noticed how often he checked his phone, how he smiled at messages he didn't expect, how the world felt slightly lighter during conversations that had no clear direction. He told himself it was temporary. Claire told him she didn't know what she wanted next. She had left a long relationship behind, not with anger, but with sadness and acceptance. She spoke about it plainly, without drama. Ethan respected that. They met again, once, then twice. They walked along the river. They sat on a bench and watched boats pass slowly. They spoke about books, music, childhood memories that still carried weight. Nothing physical passed between them. No boundaries were crossed. Still, something deeper was forming. Ethan felt it late at night, when the city quieted. He felt it when he imagined her leaving at the end of summer. He felt it when he thought about what it would mean to want someone again. That was when fear entered the space. Fear reminded him of endings, of promises that changed, of mornings that felt empty, even with someone beside him. He remembered how careful he had become, how much work it took to rebuild himself after his marriage ended. Claire didn't ask for more, but his heart began to offer it. That scared him. One evening, sitting alone in his apartment, Ethan stared at his phone and felt the weight of choice pressing down on him. He could continue and risk disappointment, or he could stop and protect what remained intact. He chose protection. The next day, he asked Claire to meet him at a cafe. His voice stayed calm, his hands did not. Claire arrived smiling, unaware of the shift waiting between them. They spoke about small things at first: the weather, her sister's plans, a movie. She wanted to see. Ethan listened, knowing this would be the last time he allowed himself to do so freely. When he finally spoke, his words were careful and kind. He told her he enjoyed their time. He told her he respected her honesty. Then he said he didn't think he should continue. Claire did not interrupt him. She didn't defend herself. She didn't ask for reasons he couldn't give without hurting them both. She simply nodded. "I understand," she said quietly. "I didn't plan for this either." Her calm response unsettled him more than anger would have. They finished their coffee in silence. When they stood to leave, there was no bitterness, just a gentle sadness that lingered in the space between them. Outside, the rain began again. Ethan walked away feeling both relieved and empty. He told himself he had done the right thing, told himself it would pass. But as the evening stretched on, his certainty weakened. He replayed moments in his mind: her laugh, her patience, the way she made him feel present without pressure. He realized he had not felt that way in years. He whispered the words again, trying to make them solid. "Never in my life I'll do it again." Yet the truth waited quietly behind the statement. It hadn't been reckless, it hadn't been wrong, hadn't hurt anyone. It had simply made him feel alive.
Case.
As he stood at the window of his apartment, watching the rain blur the city lights, Ethan admitted something he hadn't allowed himself to consider. It wasn't that bad. The fact that it mattered at all meant the promise he made to himself was already beginning to crack. Claire sat on her sister's balcony in Vancouver, the city lights stretching like tiny stars across the night. The air smelled faintly of rain and earth, soft and calming, but her chest felt heavy. She held a mug of tea with both hands, letting the warmth seep through her fingers, yet it did little to chase the thoughts of Portland and Ethan from her mind. She had not expected to feel this way. She came to the United States for a break, to step away from the routine of life that had felt too familiar, too safe, too empty. And yet, in just a few weeks, she had met someone who made her reconsider what she thought she wanted. She replayed their conversations over and over. How Ethan never pressured her, never forced an opinion, never tried to change her mind, simply listened and responded with thoughtfulness that felt rare and genuine. In a world that constantly demanded performance and proof, Ethan's calm presence was both a relief and a puzzle. She had expected intensity, drama, the kind of fast sparks she had read about in novels. Instead, she found patience. And patience could be far more dangerous. Seeds crept in, planted seeds, and grew quietly until it was almost impossible to ignore. Her mind drifted back to the night at the bookstore. How she had arrived late, dripping wet, slightly embarrassed, only to find him already there, immersed in the reading. How the small talk afterward felt effortless, yet charged with a subtle tension that neither of them fully acknowledged. There had been no physical touch, no dramatic confessions, just an understanding that passed between them in glances and pauses. That understanding had been enough to make her heartbeat skip unexpectedly. Claire sighed, leaning back against the railing. She had promised herself she wouldn't get attached. After her last relationship ended with long-distance frustration and unspoken disappointments, She swore she would not open herself to someone who might leave. Yet here she was, unable to stop thinking about a man she had barely known for more than a few weeks. It frightened her. She had learned the hard way that hope, when unguarded, could be painful. Meanwhile, back in Portland, Ethan tried to distract himself with work, errands, and the usual hum of daily life. He visited friends, rearranged his apartment, even forced himself to focus on a project he had postponed for weeks. Yet nothing worked. Every quiet moment returned her to him. Her voice, her laugh, the gentle way she listened. He remembered how easy it was to talk to her, how he could be honest without fear of judgment. He had told himself he would never allow this again, ever let someone enter his life so fully, so quickly, but he could not forget her. One evening, sitting alone with the city lights reflecting off his apartment window, he felt an unexpected urge. He pulled out his phone and stared at it for several minutes before typing a message, deleting it, and starting again. His fingers hovered, trembling slightly because he knew this could undo his resolve, could shatter the promise he had made to himself. Finally, he sent a simple text. I said never again, but I think I spoke too soon. Can we talk? Just once more. The moment he hit send, a wave of anxiety hit him. He had no idea what she would reply or if she would even respond. The wait felt eternal. Hours passed, and with every passing minute, he questioned his decision. Maybe he had acted too quickly. Maybe he was about to reopen a door that should have stayed closed. Yet deep down, he knew that if he did not reach out, he would regret it more than the risk itself. In Vancouver, Claire's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up, seeing his name on the screen. Her chest tightened. She had been trying to focus on packing for her return home, on telling herself that she would move on. That the feelings for Ethan were temporary, a fleeting summer distraction. But reading his message, she felt a spark she had tried to bury. Carefully, she typed back, I'm listening. Her heart raced. She wasn't sure what she expected from this conversation closure. Maybe, or perhaps a deeper understanding of why they were drawn to each other. But the words felt like an invitation, fragile and honest. They agreed to a video call later that night. When the screen lit up with his face, Ethan looked just as she remembered, slightly tense, slightly hesitant, but still grounded in a way that drew her in immediately. They exchanged greetings, casual at first, testing the waters. Then silence. Settled, not awkward, but heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Ethan spoke. I didn't mean to confuse things, he said, his voice calm but firm. I thought I was protecting myself, thought I was doing the right thing, but I realize now I was just afraid of feeling again. Claire nodded, understanding more than words could convey. She had felt the same fear. Fear of disappointment, fear of attachment, fear of the unknown. Yet Ethan's honesty created a safe space for both of them. A space where vulnerability did not feel dangerous. They talked for hours, exploring their fears, hopes, and the strange timing that had brought them together. They spoke about past heartbreaks, about what they had learned, and what they wanted moving forward, not with grand promises, but with genuine intent. Every word, every pause, every glance through the screen felt significant. They were no longer just two strangers passing through each other's lives. They were two people cautiously discovering that connection was possible. Even after disappointment, the conversation ended late at night, neither of them ready to say goodbye. They promised to continue talking, to meet again before her departure. Ethan felt a warmth he hadn't realized he was missing, a lightness in his chest that made him feel alive again. Claire felt relief, an excitement, a flutter she hadn't felt in years. They both knew the summer was short, that reality would demand decisions. But for the first time in a long while, the fear did not dominate their hearts. The following days were filled with quiet preparation. Claire packed her suitcase with a sense of anticipation, not anxiety. Ethan returned to his routines, but his mind often wandered to her laughter. The way her eyes seemed to understand him without explanation, the gentle patience she offered. They exchanged messages, short and meaningful, each one reinforcing the bond that had grown between them in such a brief span. When the day came for Claire to travel back to Vancouver, Ethan accompanied her to the airport. The ride was quiet, not tense, but heavy with unspoken words. They walked together through the terminal, surrounded by the hum of travelers. Yet it felt like they were alone in a private world. At the gate, they stopped, hesitated, unsure what to say that could capture the depth of their connection. Ethan took her hands gently. "I don't know what will happen next," he said, "but I know I want to try. Even if it's hard, even if it scares me." Claire smiled, a mix of relief and hope in her eyes. "I want that too," she replied. "We'll figure it out, step by step." They shared a quiet moment, a pause long enough to let their emotions breathe. Then the boarding call interrupted, and they separated reluctantly. Each carried a piece of the other, a memory, a feeling, a promise not yet defined. Weeks passed. They continued to communicate, their connection growing stronger despite the distance. Ethan found himself planning trips to see her, imagining their conversations, the way she made him feel understood. Claire looked forward to his messages, feeling excitement she had not known in years. A sense of anticipation that made life brighter. Eventually, they met again, this time with no pretense, no hesitation. The connection that had begun in cautious silence bloomed into something tender, meaningful, and real. They learned to navigate differences, to embrace vulnerability, and to trust again. Their story was not about reckless passion or fleeting. Desire It was about rediscovery, patience, and the courage to feel after heartbreak. And through it all, Ethan remembered the promise he had made. Never again. But he realized that the promise was not about avoiding feelings. It was about protecting a fragile heart until the right person arrived. Claire was that person. And as they continued forward, hand in hand across cities, time, and uncertainty, Ethan understood that what he almost walked away from was not a mistake at all. It was the beginning of something beautiful, something worth the fear, worth the risk, and worth every moment of waiting.